All right, y'all, welcome back to the channel. My name's Eric. I'm here with my buddy Christian. We want to thank all 34 subscribers so far. We are growing at an exponential rate, so we encourage you to click that subscribe button and get in and be part of the first 100. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about Ezra Eagle. We've covered it in another video. If you're unfamiliar with the Ezra Eagle's prophecy, we encourage you to go get familiar, as we're not going to talk in depth about the whole scope of the prophecy, just the things that are relating to the events expected to take place between now and the inauguration day on January 20th of next year. So as we're recording this, we are 101 days out from the election, which is crazy. It's a lot sooner than I think. It's a lot sooner than I thought it was. Like when you think July, it seems like, well, we got so much time. 101 days away from the election. And from the election day, it is 76 days until the inauguration day. So from November 4th until January 20th, after the election takes place, there's 76 days before that person is sworn in as president. So a lot has transpired in the past few weeks. Before, we were talking a lot about Joe Biden, and I don't think anyone, at least none of our viewers, anticipated he was going to win the election, but now he's not even running to win the election. So let's kind of piece together this is going to be from 2nd Ezra chapter 11. We're going to be talking specifically on verses 26 through 36. Again, we're not going to go too deep into where this comes from, all the history and background. We're just going to get right into it, and the understanding that majority of the people that are currently reading this have about these particular scriptures. So verse 26 in particular relates to Donald Trump's presidency from 2016 to 2020, and says, I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but it shortly appeared no more. And 27 is Joe Biden. So it says, and the second was sooner away than the first. Okay, so being that these were both considered short feathers, the only way to interpret Donald Trump being a short feather is that somehow, some way, whatever way you want it to define what happened during the 2020 election, whether it was just like the mass mail-in ballots or potential voter fraud that has not been substantiated in court, or the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story that would have likely impacted the outcome of the election in a few swing states and thereby the election as a whole. In order for this scripture to be true, we have to accept that as a truth, right? Regardless of if you want to believe it, in order for the rest of the prophecy to be true, that unfortunately has to be a fact. And then 27 is the second was sooner away than the first. And that opens up a whole can of worms. That is Joe Biden currently the president right now? Like, I mean, Christian, you've seen some pretty wild videos. It almost looks like he has a doppelganger that somehow has the same stutter as him. It's a little bit taller.
Yeah, and like I've seen those videos. And then did you see the one where they took the audio from the call to Kamala and put it through an AI detector? Did you watch that video?
It was like something like 96% likely. It was
and so the guy made a follow-up video. The guy made a follow-up video, and he took pieces of like known talks, like known interviews with Biden, and he put it through the same software, and it came up like not AI, like 12% chance of AI, and then he took that clip from when he calls Kamala, puts that through the system, and literally comes back like 96%. Which is just wild.
Now, I don't know where, I don't know like what kind of tool they're using to decipher whether it's real speech or AI generated speech. I don't know. But what I do know is that the signature on his, not his resignation letter, but his confirming that he would not be continuing his candidacy for a second term. I mean, that's undeniably a fake signature. That doesn't mean he doesn't have a power of attorney, right? Like, I think like it wouldn't be out of the, my mom was my power of attorney until I was like 30. So like she could, in essence, she could sign documents in my name and handle my finances if I was in a coma. Like, she didn't, but I'm not saying that he doesn't have a power of attorney. All I know is that that wasn't him signing that piece of paper. Not to mention it wasn't on presidential letterhead. And if he needed a power of attorney, and that's like a huge if, that's not to say that he's not just dead right now and that we're seeing a doppelganger out there. But if it was in fact, just a power of attorney signing something because they can. Like, why? Like, where is Joe Biden that he's unable to sign things for himself?
And it's such an important document. Like, you would think that he would pen that with his own hand. Like, that's a document that you're not going to have your secretary sign, or, you know, even a power of attorney. Like, that, I mean, he's essentially stepping out of the race. Like, you're telling me he's not going to sign that himself? I have a hard time believing that.
So, yeah, and so check this out. So he didn't, what he should have done, which he eventually did, was an Oval Office press conference where he talks to the American public, like people have been doing since like Richard Nixon. He eventually did, but there was a video that went up. When that video went live, that was supposed to be a live press conference / telecast. Like, it was not, allegedly not tape delayed. There's a video I watched by this guy that's getting some prominence called The Body Language Guy. And nothing about what he said in the video, but one of the comments in his video was like, there's no way this is live because it's too bright in the background to be 8 p.m. in Washington.
And it was raining. It was raining in Washington that night. And there's like no...
Yeah, so it was definitely something. Now, that's fine. Everyone watching this, we're all of the agreement that the government has lied about lots of things, so it's tough to say that anything we ever hear is true. But one thing we know that I can't say is true, but that I have a pretty good idea is true, that video was pre-recorded. If that was the real Joe Biden, that was a pre-recorded video. And then it begs the question, when was it recorded?
And didn't his watch, like I saw some comments that said that his watch, if you zoom in on it, like shows a completely different time from when it was supposedly recorded.
Yeah, so I mean, you could make I've probably never worn a watch that had the right time on it. It's more like a decorative ornament. Sometimes my watch didn't even have a working battery when I wore a watch.
That's embarrassing. But the fact that you just admitted that, I have never once put a watch on my hand that wasn't set to time.
Well, I don't wear a watch, so it's crazy. They invented something like 20-something years ago, bro, that you just have it in your pocket at all times. It's called a phone that has the time, so I don't need a watch. It's people that wear watches now, they do it as jewelry, the same way a woman wears
earrings.
Too
much tech, bro. Too much tech.
Anyways, we're getting off into the weeds, but all we're saying is in order for the verse 27 to also be true, because Trump did complete a full 4 years, is Joe Biden's term, his short feather would have to be shorter than President Trump's term, meaning that in some way, shape, or form, he would either be not with us anymore, rest in peace, between now and January 20th, which is up for debate if that's already taken place, or the 25th Amendment would have to be invoked, which I don't think at this point the Democrats are inclined to do and create more disruption and chaos. So
now, could you speculate?
I mean, that's a big. That's a big.
Could you speculate, Eric, that maybe if he's not currently running the country, that would mean he was a short feather, like a shorter feather?
Well, I think that's the tough part about this whole prophecy, is you can twist it to mean whatever you want.
Fit your
you know
narrative?
What I mean? I feel like whatever narrative you want it to be, you can twist it, and that's why this is so hard to give veracity to in its entirety, because there's so many variables. The fact that you have to just accept at face value that, the election must have been rigged to make Donald Trump not win, and that's why he was a short feather, not just that he lost an election, right? Like we have to accept that as a fact in order to twist it into a narrative. And I know that there are probably a lot of people watching this that feel comfortable doing that. I think I'm not saying it's a stretch. I'm just saying like something that hasn't been substantiated with proof that it was a stolen election, like accepting that as a fact to like make it fit a narrative is tough. And same with verse 27. So in order for Biden to be shorter than the first, that we're saying, okay, one of the possible explanations to keep this thing going is that he's just not currently running the country. Okay, and so what does that mean? If he's not running the country, we accept that it's not Kamala that's the president. Otherwise, she would be a feather that comes before the eagle heads, right? Or that's what we're about to get to. So verse 28 says, and I beheld, and lo, the two that remain. So remember, there are two feathers that come before the eagle heads get involved. The two that remained thought also in themselves to reign. Now, notice that at no point does it say the word he or she. So there's nothing eliminating Kamala from potentially being one of these feathers. But some of the events that happen right now make it difficult for me to see that as being a viable possibility for any part of this to come to pass between now and January 20th. It says in verse 29, and when they so thought, so the two that remained thought also feathers. And I think it's important for me, like the qualification I've given to what a feather is someone that was elected as either the president or the vice president. So in the case of Gerald Ford, he was not, when he came after Richard Nixon, so Richard Nixon's vice president had stepped down before Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon appoints Gerald Ford, who wasn't technically, I guess he was he the Speaker of the House, I believe at the time? He was appointed by Richard Nixon and he became a feather. So I think for me, in order for somebody to be a feather, he or she would have to have been elected or appointed to the presidency or vice president, right? But you can't be appointed to become the president. Like if the president and vice president die, I don't think that by magic, the Speaker of the House is a quote feather that was unelected by the people. That's just this is my interpretation, right? So where it says the two that remained in verse 29, when they so thought to reign, remember it says they thought in themselves to reign. So the way I would interpret that, and we'll get to that, is that there were two feathers who were elected by the will of the people, a president and vice president, who thought in themselves to reign. And when they so thought, behold, there awaked one of the heads that were at rest. Namely, it that was in the midst, for it was greater than the two heads. So before we get, I've heard so many theories about what the heads represent. It's the three branches of government, it's the CIA and this and that. So here's what 2 Ezra chapter 12, verses 22 to 24 says specifically about what the heads are. So it says, and whereas thou sawest three heads resting, this is the interpretation. In his last days shall the Most High raise up three kingdoms and renew many things therein, and they shall have the dominion of the earth. Remember, words matter. You can't just say, well, a kingdom could be anything. No, the definition of a kingdom is a country, state, or territory ruled by a king or queen. Or we'll say, in this case, a president. So it's not just like some nebulous dark forces or cabal. Like it has to be something like a landmass that is, or an entity that is ruled by a king or queen. So these are, regions of the world, not just like this nebulous group of people that run things from wherever. And in his last day shall the Most High raise up three kingdoms and renew many things therein, and they shall have dominion of the earth. Makes sense. And of those that dwell therein, with much oppression above all those that were before them. So all the people in the whole world will be oppressed more than any time ever in the history of the world before. So this rules out ancient Rome. Like there are definitely people way outside the scope of ancient Rome or the British Empire that never even heard of those places. Like there are people living in Fiji that never even heard of the Roman Empire, right? It's like it definitely talking about our day and not some past day, a couple hundred years or a couple thousand years in the past. And of those that dwell therein with much oppression, all above those that were before them, therefore they are called the heads of the eagle. So, let me know your thoughts on that and who you think in that case, who do the three, because this part is definitely open for interpretation, who the three eagle heads are based on an understanding that they're kingdoms.
So could it be like the US, Russia, and China?
That's what I think. And we didn't even discuss this beforehand. So that's kind of what my interpretation is, that those are the three world superpowers. Like England's no longer a superpower. I think the US just criticized their military force the other day. So like they shouldn't be considered a tier 1 military force because like they would need the US's help like to invade somewhere. So it's none of the country. It can't be any of the countries that we think of as like Western powers. Not Australia or France or really only three countries that kind of fit the bill.
Well, we know China
could bring dominion over.
We know
the whole
China and Russia are working together because NORAD just intercepted two fighter jets, one Russian, one Chinese over Alaska. That was like yesterday or the day before. So we know they're actively working together. I mean, that was a huge slap in America's face to be on American soil. I guess American airspace is a better better way to phrase it, but.
Well, and not only that, like they're working on devolving from what the world has known as the petrodollar or the United States dollar being the world's reserve currency. They're working on their own payment system outside of the SWIFT system called the BRICS. And there are thousands of videos that will discuss that in greater detail, but BRICS, and there are more countries now, but it stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, like the 5 major nations that are coming up with their own payment system outside of the US dollar being the world's reserve currency. So they have broken away, and there's no longer this sole dominance over the world that we in America like to think there is. And what's crazy, Christian, just without getting too much further, you already highlighted something. They are working together, and guess what it says about the eagle heads going forward? It kind of debunks this idea that it's like that the 3 eagle heads are the legislative, judicial, and executive branch. It just doesn't make any sense how any of that could come to pass. Well, what we read next. So back to 29 of chapter 11, it says, when they so thought, so these 2 feathers that elected possibly by the people, president, vice president, behold, there awaked one of the eagle heads that were at rest, for it was greater than the 2 heads. Then I saw that the 2 other heads were joined with it. And behold, the head was turned with them that were with it, and did eat up the 2 feathers under the wing that would have reigned. So they didn't get a chance. So feathers that, and then this is my interpretation, you're welcome to have your own. So that there were 2 feathers of president and vice president that would have reigned. They thought in themselves to reign. They would have reigned because they, let's say, were elected on November 4th. Between November 4th and January 20th, they were eaten up by the eagle heads. Now, he's like, all right, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would Russia, China, and the U.S. gang up to kill, the president-elect and the vice president-elect? I don't know. Here's what it says after this. Verse 32, but this head put the whole earth in fear. So we're going to say America being the middle head, and bear rule in it over all those that had dwelt upon the earth with much oppression. And it had the governance of the world more than all the wings that had been. So going back to our 800 military bases around the world, I would say that regardless of China and Russia combining forces, I still think the U.S. versus the 2 of them would stand a pretty good chance at winning. We'll just say that. So we're the big head. And after this, I beheld, and lo, the head that was in the midst suddenly appeared no more, like as the wings. But there remained the 2 heads, which also in like sort ruled upon the earth and over those that dwell therein. So
that would mean
to
America
me, it almost
is no more?
seems like, basically the way that it shows. Now, we do know there's 2 extra feathers that come at the end of this, but us being a superpower kingdom ruling the world almost is seen as no more after this. And I beheld, and lo, the head upon the right side devoured it that was upon the left side. So after China and Russia somehow intervene alongside of the powers that be in America to make it so whoever wins this election and their vice president are not able to be president, then there is infighting within those 2 entities. And then it gets into all the stuff that comes after. But I say all that to say some of these things about the heads eating themselves or the heads dying may not necessarily happen, the day after something nefarious may or may not happen to the president. As we see, there's one verse related to Trump. And behold, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly appeared no more. That was 4 years just in that one line. So there is an event, I believe, is going to take place between November 4th and January 20th. But all the other events that happen after that, if there's like this giant world war and America ceases to be no more or something like that, I think it's possible that could be an event that takes many years to transpire. It could be like that, everything we just talked about after that could be like a 15-year
time frame,
global war. Now, it stands to reason who those feathers are, and that's, if we knew the $1 million question, to literally, like, you could bet on this on a couple websites. If we knew who is going to win the election and then die, we could cash in pretty good. But the way I see it now, and Christian, you give me your opinion, but I kind of see it as someone I would not personally be voting for at this moment. President Trump, I don't see a world where he isn't this feather. It would have to either be, some world where President Trump and his vice president are killed. I don't see, and this maybe is my political bias at play. I don't see a world where there is like some collusion to take out Kamala. And if she is the nominee, it could be anybody at this point. It could be someone that's not even on anyone's radar. And their running mate, I don't see them winning and some dark, deep state wanting to take them out. Is that fair?
Well, first of all, I think to put to rest the Kamala question, I was thinking Kamala wouldn't be the nominee, even though Biden endorsed her. But after the video of her talking to the Obamas and saying that she's ready to do this with them, and them giving her their endorsement, I'm convinced that she will be the nominee. I think when you got the Obamas behind you, like who in the Democratic Party is going to fight that?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. And the Clintons have come out and endorsed her too. So like you got the biggest political families
and I'm trying
establishment families.
I'm trying not to buy into the left hype that's been around it, because at first I was like, oh, you know what? As soon as the assassination attempt happened, I'm like, this is Trump. He's going to win in a landslide. But I've been quite surprised with the amount of people, especially women, who have just come out and said, hey, we're going to vote for her because she's a woman. And they're saying that especially younger women will come out in droves to vote for her. And
I don't doubt
I think
that.
It's interesting. I think it's an interesting theory. I'm trying not to get bought into the hype. Obviously, where I stand. My vote's going to go with Trump at this point. But I where I thought it was a landslide, I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I think it'd be a lot closer than we think. Now, the way things are currently, as an avid RFK supporter, I do have to face reality. There's at this point, it would have to require something catastrophic happening to Donald Trump, because the Democrats clearly aren't going to, as much as I think RFK would gladly accept the Democratic nomination. I don't see that. That's not going to happen. That's clearly not going to happen, even though he's polling at 10+% without a party.
Okay, so let's talk about the other scenario. Only way that, why would he not take?
Yeah, so here's another scenario. Here's another possible scenario. So the way the 12th Amendment works, and I'm not like this Constitution expert, but the way the 12th Amendment works is the top 3 electoral college vote getters for president go into. It goes to the state houses, and each state has 1 vote for president. Right. Okay, so Rhode Island gets 1 vote, California gets 1 vote. Out of those 50, there needs to be a majority. So can't be split. There has to be someone that at least gets 26. Right. And what's fascinating is the vice president is the top 2 electoral college vote getters, and that goes to the Senate. Kind of the same thing. So somebody needs to get a consensus 50%. So I don't see RFK winning the election outright at this time. If something cataclysmic happened between now and November, who knows what could happen. I think there are a lot of people on both sides who, if their candidate died the day before election, would have no qualms voting for RFK. He's like their second best choice, right? Like he's the lesser of the lesser evil, right? So I think there is a world where he could win states like Alaska or Maine that have ranked choice voting and pick up even just a couple electoral votes, maybe 2 or 3 electoral votes. I think Alaska has 4. No, maybe Alaska has 3, Maine has 4. Or the state of Utah, which even though it bends heavily Republican, definitely has a soft spot for independent thinking, evidenced by Ross Perot and Evan McMullen, which got over 20% in the state. Right. So these are really the only states I can reasonably see him winning. So in order for a contingent election to provide a different scenario than what we're talking about, he would have to win at least 1 state and the other 2 candidates not reach 270. Now there are a couple of mathematical paths to that. They are very slim. If Robert F. Kennedy Jr. only had 4 electoral votes, it would be a very slim margin that would make this happen. But in that case, his running mate wouldn't be eligible to be the vice president. So then it would go between J.D. Vance and, let's assume it's blue teams. We won't even get a name. Just blue teams vice president candidate as the 2 possible vice presidents, and then the 3 possible presidents would be RFK, Kamala, and Trump. Right now, the state houses are dominated by the red team. I think it's like 27-23 or 28-22, somewhere. Like the red team has like a pretty solid, a pretty good leaning majority. So you might think like, oh, it'd definitely be Trump would be the president, and even if he doesn't get 270, right? But there's a lot of these state houses that are heavily polarized as well, and I think that there are some people that would be committing political suicide by just automatically anointing Donald Trump.
Right.
So I think there is a possibility in a contingent election based on the 12th Amendment where RFK could become the president and somebody else besides his running mate becomes the vice president. It has happened once before in I think it was 1824. This exact thing happened. The person that got the plurality of electoral votes was not elected president. So Andrew Jackson got the plurality of electoral votes and didn't become the president. It was Martin Van Buren, I believe. So there is a historical precedent for it happening, but that's the only other scenario that I can conceive of right now where there's a different person besides Trump. And right now, if Vance remains his VP, there's speculation that, people talk, like, who knows what's real at this point? People saying that he's going to get replaced, blah, 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 blah. But as right now, those are the 2 that
what doesn't make sense to me is we know for a fact that Trump asked RFK Jr. to be his VP before he picked Vance.
We don't know. Oh, that is true.
Confirmed.
But Trump did not personally. No. But what was confirmed is that people in Trump's camp floated it past him. It wasn't like Trump called him personally. Like, people in Trump's camp called people from RFK's camp and asked him what his inclination would be to do it. So
I could be wrong. I could be
in
wrong.
The world of
but
politics,
I'm almost
similar,
positive I saw a video by RFK Jr. I'll have to look it up after we're done filming this. But and tell me I'm wrong.
He said.
Tell me I'm wrong in the.
I think it was. No. You're not wrong that RFK said this, but I think it was a bit of hyperbole.
RFK said that he called him right after the assassination. Called him right after the assassination attempt and literally told him, asked him to be his vice president. Because I remember RFK telling the interviewer, this was like on his social media, on RFK Jr.'s social media. He told the interviewer, he's like, the reason I told him no is because I believe I can win this. I'm in it to win it, is what he said. Yeah. And so if that's the case, if he did ask him,
I'd have to see.
I'll send you the interview because I know I saw this video and roast me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I swear I saw this video. And so if that's the case, if he was asked to, why would you not take that? I mean, you're a shoo-in. You spend 4 years as the vice president, and you're a shoo-in for 8 more years as the president.
Well, I think it's because he stands on business. I think when he says that he doesn't think Trump was a good president and he added more to the national debt than any president, maybe percentage-wise, no, but added more to the national debt in a dollar figure than any president ever in the history of the country. Like, he really believes that he would do a better job.
I'm not saying that he doesn't
balancing our budget.
Yeah, I'm not saying that he doesn't believe that, but you're telling me that it's not worth sitting in the wings for 4 years to have the opportunity to make a real change for 8. I mean, right now, your chances of winning are slim.
It's a good, I agree. I think that if the tide has shifted a little bit, him not getting on the debate stage definitely impacted the level of credibility that he was seen to have by being omitted from the debate stage. He got in 6 polls. He got over 15%. CNN didn't include all of the polls. Since the debate, even after Biden's been replaced, I don't think he's eclipsed 15% in any of the polls. So it might seem like small potatoes to most people. Like he was always polling between 10 and 15%, but now it's like 10 to 12% or 7 to 12%. So it's like his credibility definitely waned from not being allowed on the debate stage.
Do you think there's a world where J.D. Vance gets replaced and RFK wises up and takes the VP spot?
That's what I think is so fascinating about this prophecy is that once it happens, we'll know exactly who it's been talking about the whole time. But it's just kind of a lot of hoopla.
Speculation.
Honestly, folks, I hope that this is not true. I hope that this is misinterpreted and it was talking about the Roman Empire, and I'm full of it. And this has already happened. These are things that Ezra already saw that came to pass 2,000 years ago, and we're just wasting our time, and nothing miraculous or devastating happens 101 days from now. That's what I hope happens. That's my honest hope. I hope I'm not like part of this elite group that saw something that no one else saw. That would be my hope for my life in this country. But assuming that that's true, I don't know. There probably is a world where J.D. Vance could be unselected and then somebody else selected. And if that person were RFK, it would make for a very interesting time, because there's two people that the blue team does not like, is Trump and RFK, if they were on the same ticket. That would be an interesting ticket.
Okay, the real question is, okay, Eric, so let's play that scenario out. So J.D. Vance gets replaced. RFK Jr. is now the VP pick for Trump, who you are not a Trump guy.
Yeah.
Does that sway your vote? Would you vote Trump?
I say this completely joking, but we just know that Trump's one head swivel away from RFK being the president, right? So,
oh my gosh! Don't even say that.
I'm kidding. I think that would impact who I voted for, and as someone who did not vote for Trump in 2016 or 2020, that would probably impact my vote at this point, just with all the things that are happening. Yeah. So there is a world. There is a
somebody
world
at RFK Jr. in here.
There is a world where I vote for Trump.
And I need Eric to vote for Trump.
Yeah, because
we need somebody to tag RFK Jr. in this video. I need him to run with Trump so that Eric will actually vote for him.
So I live in a swing state, and I'm happily voting for RFK Jr. at this point. So I just need everyone to understand that I'm serious about my moral compass. That I don't believe in voting out of fear. I believe that just vote. I'm not trying to get all religious, but I think that's kind of what we're asked to do, is vote for the person who most represents the morals that my Savior represents. So I don't want people can roast me for saying that and saying it's two evils and one of them's better than the other. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. But I think that would probably swing the pendulum for me. Anyways, I think we've gone on pretty long. We really encourage your feedback. I know a lot of you are involved in Facebook groups and other groups regarding this very prophecy, and as it comes closer and closer to fruition or to a thing of naught, I think there's going to be an elevated interest in this prophecy. And so I think it behooves you to help boost this in the algorithm. Like this video, make sure you subscribe, and please comment and let us know your thoughts if you agree with what we're saying or if you have a different interpretation. We definitely don't feel that we are the all-knowing stewards that hold the truth, and no one else is allowed to have any truth here. We could be completely wrong, and we'd love to hear your opinion. So
yeah, and please share the video, share the link in any of these groups. We would love to be roasted in the comments if we're wrong. We would love to better understand this. We're trying to figure it out just like anybody else. So please help us out. Let's figure this out together, and if it is true, that way we can be prepared.
Yeah. Thanks so much, y'all. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.